The back screw is in, the front screw is in. Line these up and press. And on the back side I have clear marks, drill some holes. I've made the holes a little bit bigger than they need to be because I can always add a washer. I've also changed out to a black screw instead of a silver screw, and they both line up. The amplifier will sit just like this right here. The next step, of course, is the hard part, or the most time-consuming part, which is wiring up the amplifier. We won't be using any RCAs in this installation because it's all going to be high level, 4-channel. That's perfect for running speed wire. My thought right now is to run 2 runs of speed wire, 1 for the high level, 1 obviously for the output back to the amplifier, 2 up and down here. My power wire, as we've discussed already, is gonna go this way out, so I'll be able to keep everything very nicely situated on top of this board. The nice thing about this car is it's not aluminum. It's steel. We don't have to run the dual power and ground or anything like that. We just need to run a simple 4-gauge up to the battery, and it's gonna be a short run, maybe about 6 or 7 feet. The other wire that needs to go to the back is the subwoofer wire, and then there's the bass knob that needs to go that way. We have to find some place to put that in the dash area. We still have plenty of work cut out for us, but this next step involves me going over to the workbench, so that's where we're going, guys. I've already screwed the amplifier down to this piece of plastic just so I could get an idea of how it's gonna lay out without it shifting around. When working with ABS, always use a drill bit. Don't just put a screw into this. Pre-drill all your holes. What'll happen is the heat, when you screw it in, it'll just melt and it won't get tight. By pre-drilling the hole, it'll just go right in, it'll self-thread itself, it'll be perfect. Problems that I'm seeing so far, this area here is where everything needs to come out. It's gonna come out, signal's gonna go to the back of the car, power wire is gonna go to the front of the car. So they're gonna do this. The bass wire is also gonna go to the back of the car. So everything's signal speaker is going this way. This area here is where the seat mount is. The seat mount's here. This is that area where the sliding wire comes up. The carpet seam is located right about here. There's a point here in the car where I can use for a factory ground. What I'm thinking about is how I want to move the wire through this. I don't need a bunch of, because there's no room for it. My thought is bring the power wire and the ground out to about here, which is halfway in the RCA section, and drill 2 holes to dump the wire underneath. That way the power wire can come underneath here and turn and join the main wiring harness and go up into the engine bay. Bring the signal wire out across the top here and have it go down into the seam right about here. So drill another hole here, have it go into the seam here, because the distance here isn't that far. You can see this side area, so I'd like to dump it back some. The bass knob will do the same thing. I'll probably just drill a hole here because the bass knob is going to go this way. The first part I want to get out of the way then is going to be the power wire. I want to drill those holes and figure that out. I've taken the liberty of grabbing the power wire I'm going to use, which is Stinger 4-gauge black. I put our shrink wrap and our braided loom over the end of it. I just want to screw it into place and see how it fits onto here. And I've done the same with the red power wire. I'm thinking I need 2 holes. I need 1 for power and I need 1 for ground. And I almost want to stagger them just a little bit, like put my hole here for the power and put my hole here for the ground. I have a drill bit already, and I'll just make a small hole first. Grab a uni bit. With a uni bit, I like to go halfway through the top and the other half through the bottom. And with ABS, it's always nice to have a deburring tool. Go around the edge of it, and that'll actually round it over and give it a nicer finished look. I like the idea so far. I think I'm gonna do a staggered offset, and I need to get some holes drilled for some zip ties to hold this nice and tight in place. And there we go. They're running this way. I can twist them any way I want. Next is going to be this signal wire here. I've created 2 runs of speed wire, a blue run and a green run. The blue run is going to be my signal, and my green run is going to be my speakers. I've added on my micro Phoenix connectors. On this amplifier, there's the 8 inputs. I'm going to be using inputs front 1 and 2 here on the bottom, and inputs rear 3 and 4 at the top here on the opposite side. So they're going to sit like this into the amplifier. I don't need to worry about feeding something into the subwoofer because all of that can be selected in the software. I can tell my front inputs to feed my subwoofer outputs. Thought was to drill a hole here to dump that down, so right about the edge, just to force that turn. That'll give me enough to put a zip tie here and here to hold this into place. Just like before, I'll pre-drill my hole. I need to figure out where I want it. We'll go right there. I'm gonna do the same with this. Alright, so that is the center. And we'll come over. I'm gonna pre-drill this hole too, just so I get them at the same spot. And that gets the signal input into place, which now we can move on to the signal output. I did run the remote turn on in through this, and we're gonna hook it up to here. Even though we're using DC offset, the GTO circuit, sometimes strange things can happen in any install. There's no reason to not have one in there just in case, because you don't wanna have to pull this whole thing back apart to run a remote turn on. We'll go through this hole here, and we'll do the same thing. We'll add some zip ties here, and we'll zip tie in the remote turn on wire. And that brings the remote turn on into place, zip tied nice and tight up against there. Next is going to be the bass knob. There's nothing serious about this. It's just gonna plug in. It's just gonna plug in and go this way. This just needs 1 zip tie to hold the wire in place, just like that. And that leaves, which is funny because these are the 2 wires I always forget, the bass knob and the subwoofer wire. I forget it all the time, but I pre-made up the wire for us. I like to use individual wiring and then put it in the braided sleeving. When you put a logo onto braided sleeving like this and you have a power and ground, make sure you pay attention to what size negative and positive. You don't want to put it on and then have it go like this. You don't see it. The other thing too, if you'll notice, the 5-star logo goes the same direction all the way through the install, which is of course very important. When you're doing something like this where you have wires running underneath, such as the power wire and the bass knob, when you go to drill holes through this, you gotta know where those wires are at, otherwise you could destroy your wiring. I want to get this first zip tie in to hold the wire so I can kind of run an idea as far as how I want this to go. What I'm thinking is another zip tie here, turn this and drill another hole right here so that they all come into the same spot. Just like this. This is the reason I like to do individually stranded wire, meaning a red and a black and not 2 wires that are connected together like this, because these don't like to move, whereas if I do 2 individual wires, I have a lot more leverage and I can get some of these angles that I want. It's just a lot more flexible when running in the car. And this is what we end up with. Our 2 mounting points, all our speakers and signal are coming and they're going to wrap around the bottom side of the amplifier and go into the carpet. Power wire and ground will go this way, the bass knob will go that way. Everything is secured tight and ready to go. Into the car is where this needs to be next. Looking at the amplifier underneath the seat, pulling back the carpet, one of the biggest questions we get is where do we ground the amplifier when underneath the seat? Most, not all, most car manufacturers use this piece here as a ground, which means there'll be screw provisions like here and here that we can use for those ground points. That way we don't have to drill All we need is a bolt. This is typically an M6 size bolt that'll go in here. Fine thread. Most people use the same size. This area here, all the wire is going to come through here, go up. The base knob wire is kind of already draped in place, and then the rest of the wiring will come this way. Our power wire is anxiously waiting to go this side, and the rest of these are waiting to go that way up to this side of the car and back to that amplifier.